Before we dive in, this week's episode is brought to you by my free cheat sheet, 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write. In this guide, I give you 30 ways that you can find time to write in the small gaps that appear between the various errands and tasks and responsibilities that you have in your day-to-day life. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have any time to spare, but I can guarantee these top tips will give you writing time you didn't think you had. If you thought writing always involved a pen and paper or a keyboard, think again. If you thought you needed at least an hour at a time to write your manuscript, I help you reframe that. You won't be disappointed. Get your free copy of 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write by going to emmadesi.com/30 top tips. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Kim Marsh is a writing and book coach. In her own words, she's not a New York Times bestselling author, but still a worthwhile human. Kim founded the Open Book Company to help authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, inspirational speakers but I'm not really a writer, writers, to find, hone and use their voice. She does this through a coaching practice rooted in empathy, authenticity and self-compassion. Her clients go on to create blogs and articles, pen speeches and presentations, and publish manuscripts with her partnership and support. In addition to providing one-on-one coaching, Kim recently launched Open Book Writing Circles to create a space for accountability and community to anyone experiencing self-doubt or a desire for more support when it comes to their writing process. Kim firmly believes you do not need to have a major book deal or a spot on the global stage or indeed a PhD in English Lit to have a story worth telling. And I absolutely agree with her 100%. You do not need to have any of those things. You just need to have a story and you need to have the desire to tell it. So I know you're going to really enjoy this conversation with Kim, and we talk about community. So important to anybody who is writing in any capacity. Often as fiction writers, we tend to be quite reclusive, we're quite introverted, but we still do need to have that community, even if it's a small one of perhaps just 3, 4 or 5 people. But with Kim, we're going to find out what kinds of communities are out there, whether you do need to join one. I think you do, and how you can find them and how you can find the one that is right for you. So let's find out more. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to our chat. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I'd love to just start by asking you, like I do with everybody, please do tell us about your journey to writing, to coaching, and to where you are now.
Of course. Well, we don't have enough time for my journey to writing because that started back when I was a little kiddo, probably 5, 6 years old with a pencil and paper, graduated onto my little brightly colored journals and diaries and haven't looked back from there. But my journey to the professional space of writing and coaching is a little bit more recent. So my background is actually in education, nonprofit, and I spent a number of years in the corporate world doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So I am kind of the typical part of what has been commonly referred to as the Great Resignation or the Great Reawakening or whatever we want to call it, of what happened to a bunch of us during COVID, where we looked around and said, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? My journey started a little bit before that. I was hungry for whatever was next, and I was trying to figure out whatever was next. And I kept coming back to what was one of my first passions, which was writing. And I decided, after many rejections and many looks at taking traditional paths to my next role professionally and in the corporate world, and maybe going back to nonprofit, et cetera, I had this sort of aha moment, which was, I kind of need to go out on my own and take control of my own career. And that's what felt good to me at the time. And I never would have imagined, I say 10 years ago, but probably 3 years ago, that I would be an entrepreneur, that I would start my own business, that I would hang out my own shingle. But I was really motivated by a lot of no's. And now I know that the universe was presenting me with all of those no's and nudging me in this direction of what I'm meant to be doing. So I am so grateful. And about a year and a half ago, I, again, kind of coming back to that original love of writing, said, okay, so I know I'm going to start my own business, and what is that business going to be? And I started Googling and doing all the things we do, looking for freelance writing jobs and freelance writing gigs. And I started coming across different courses and different mentors and folks to learn from. And I just started taking all of these classes and soaking everything in, and put my stake in the ground and said, okay, freelance writing business, that's what I'm going to do. And I can imagine if I went back, I think I probably sent maybe like 2 cold pitches ever, because the minute I said I'm going to start a freelance writing business, it almost immediately evolved into a coaching business, because people started coming to me and saying, oh, hey, you're doing that writing thing, right? Could you help me write this bio for this conference I'm going to be in? Or, hey, you're doing that writing thing, right? Could you help me with this blog post I need to get up, or this LinkedIn article that I need to do? And it just kind of started happening more organically with my clients. And that just evolved and moved on from there. And I had one very pivotal moment, which is the last little tidbit I'll share with you about this part of the journey, which was someone who is now a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Tina Strawn, and she has a book that's coming out in January with Row House Publishing. It's called Are We Free Yet? The Black Queer Guide to Divorcing America. And Tina's now one of my best friends, but a year ago, we were acquaintances, and she was one of those, hey, you're starting that writing thing, right? I'm looking for a writing coach. Would you be my writing coach? And my first answer was yes. And then my second response was, what's a writing coach? And a year later, here we are, Emma. So that's the story.
Wonderful.
I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I love it. I love how you recognized the universe was nudging you in a certain direction to come back to your first love and what it is that you really, really wanted to do. I'm curious, in your corporate and nonprofit world, did you write in that section of the world as well? So making that transition was semi-smooth.
I was doing a lot of what is called in the corporate side communications. So writing memos and briefing articles and blog posts and content for internal and external audiences. And one of the things that I informally was known for on my team was being the person who everyone would go to for me to read their email before they sent their email to someone, to make sure that the message they wanted to come across was coming across well. So my friends who used to do that now joke with me to say, you really have been being a writing coach like for so long, just without the title, because that was my informal role. So it's kind of been both a natural and informal and formal part of my journey for a number of years.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Just on a side note about that, about emails, it always amuses me that that we do need other people to look at our emails. It's not like writing a letter. It is a different thing, and trying to get that tone right, especially if you're trying to give feedback on something, but you want it to be taken in a positive light without using emojis. That's a real skill in itself. It's very, very skillful.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I haven't actually sat down to do this, but I should. I'm going to make a note of doing it. The kind of model and the mindset and framework that I encourage people to use to think about their nonfiction books or nonfiction content, probably I could apply that to email writing as well, because it's about audience, it's about impact and intent, it's about what are your goals. So I'm going to that's a good idea. I'm going to take that framework and see how we can apply it to emails, because you're right, it's the same thing. And by the way, the other side note, that's about 50% of my feedback when people ask me to look at an email is, you should just pick up the phone and have this conversation, by the way, because most of the emails we're stressed about sending, they'd be better off as a quick phone conversation. So that is
a good tip. A good tip. Yes. All right. So we're here today to talk about communities. You have your own, you host your own community. So you clearly feel very strongly that these are a great ways to go. So what kind of communities are there out there for new writers? And we perhaps, I've got a fiction writing audience, but I know that a lot of them do write memoir as well. So if we were able to kind of think about memoir specifically, or combine that with nonfiction, certainly, where are the communities that might be useful for a new writer?
Yeah. So the thing that I share with people, you are not for lack of a community to find when it comes to your writing. There are tons out there. Throw, memoir writing community in your Google search bar, and you'll find tons of things that you're looking for. You can find a lot for free on places like meetup.com. You can find a ton on the social channels like Facebook. You can find some that are a little bit more in the professional realm on LinkedIn. You can find them everywhere. The key is finding the right one for you. And that is something that can take some time, and it is okay for you not to, and encouraged actually by me, for you to not jump into a community and assume that's the one that you're going to be in long term, because they all have different areas of focus. So for example, my community is super focused on mindset. And one of the main reasons that I started the open book writing circles is because the same two challenges were coming up for all of my one-on-one clients. And I think this applies to the fiction, nonfiction, memoir, anyone who's picking up a pen, this probably applies to you. The first challenge that came up for all of my clients, without fail, no matter how experienced they were, whether they had a legitimate, formal, traditional book deal, or they were writing the first word that they'd ever put out into the world, it was carving out the time to write. So making the time and prioritizing it. And I know you know that one well. I've seen your tip sheet. And then number two is all the mindset stuff. So I'm not good enough. Why will anyone want to read what I have to say? Hasn't this already been said before? Is anyone ever even going to want to read what I'm writing? All of like the mindset, writer's block, all of that stuff. So that kept coming up. So that's where the writing circles that I created were born from, because they are about bringing people together to, number one, have that accountability. So you have that time on the calendar and it's carved out. And number two, to support each other in a space, in a community, in an environment that is created on the premise that like, we all don't know what we're doing. There are a lot of writers groups out there that people feel very intimidated to join, that I have felt very intimidated to join. It is not to say that there is not value in those spaces for the right people, but those aren't the people who are attracted to my writing circle. And that's cool too. So I think my key message here for people looking is to, the thing that popped into my head is like playing the field, kind of like in a dating contest.
Yeah.
Like put yourself out there, try out different matches, swipe left, swipe right, whatever happens, and give different spaces a chance and see the one that's a good fit for you, because this is a space where you're going to be really vulnerable. And sharing your writing, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever, is a very vulnerable act. One that I believe deserves to be treated with reverence and appreciation. And you want to find, whether it's a coach or whether it's a community group of people who not necessarily always agree with you on everything, don't get me wrong, but have created a space that you feels like home for you when it comes to writing. You don't want to have that feeling of anxiety and nerves and stress about going to the group. Save that for your writing.
Yeah. Well, I want to highlight the point that you made there, just so that our listeners really hear it. That whether it's somebody who is fully established with a traditional deal, even with one of the big five, or they're right at the beginning and just tentatively stepping into the writing sphere, everybody has those same fears. Everybody has that feeling of, I don't belong here. I'm going to get found out. I'm going to get caught. Who's interested? All of that stuff goes around in everybody's head. So if you are new, if you are battling with that first manuscript and you're feeling that way, just know that Hilary Mantel feels that way. Even Stephen King, I'm sure, has a few moments of those. So you're in good company if you feel that way, and don't let it stop you. Just know it's part of the process.
Yeah, don't let it stop you. And also, my sort of joking introduction of myself is often, hey, I'm Kim. I'm not a New York Times bestselling author, but I'm still a worthwhile human. And I bet you are too. I think one of the things that stops us as well is we can say, yeah, that's great for those people, but look what they've been able to do. And I'll never, get to quote unquote that level or that success or whatever the case may be. And I'm on a one-woman mission to ban the word success from everyone's vocabularies, because what even is success? It is so different for each of us. And I think that's a big part of the fear of many of us, because it is me. I am part of the community and I am part of the circle. One of the biggest things that can impact us is almost like this idea that we see what other people are doing, and our brain just, I'll speak for myself. My brain immediately switches into this mode of, well, I could never do X, and then therefore I'm not even going to take one step in that direction. And that to me is the biggest shame of it all, and why I've created these spaces. I actually don't know if I'll ever have well, actually, I shouldn't say it this way. I will say something that I that I can be confident. I will never run a course or a session entitled How to Write a #1 Best-Selling Book. And it's not to say that there aren't courses out there that are valid and probably could teach you how to do that. But the reason I won't do that is because there probably is a formula of how to get a book onto a bestseller list.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that the writers that I'm working with, or the people who are I think I'm a writer, but am I a writer is probably a more accurate way to describe it, that I'm working with. Everyone has a different path and a different goal and a different reason for their writing. For some people, it's very personal. For other people, it's to share a message. For other people, it's to get their story out there. For other people, fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. So to me, there probably is a very formulaic way to achieve what is considered more traditional success in the literary world. And I leave that to the experts who can do that and who I respect and who came before me. That's not where I'm playing. I'm playing in that gray area in between, never writing one single word down that you share with the world and the top of the bestseller list. There is a huge gray area in between those two things. Let's play there and have fun and have an opportunity to share what we want to say and what's on our minds and what's on our hearts with even just one other person. Because what happens is we see that summit, we see that tip of the mountain. We don't think we can get to that very tippy top. And then we just don't even take that first step. But wait, I don't even need to be at the top of the mountain. I'm okay hanging out halfway over here, eating a sandwich. That'd be fine with me. So yeah, so we should play there a little bit more.
I love that. So does that, we were talking before we started recording, you had mentioned this myth of success. Is that kind of fits in with what you were just talking about, this idea of, I'm seeing people at the top of the mountain, therefore they must be successful, they must have it all together. I could never achieve that. Why even bother?
Yeah, and it's exactly that. And it's what I encourage everyone who will listen to what I have to say. I was going to say who comes to my community or my free workshop or whatever, but no, anyone who just opens up a Zoom conversation and I'm there, I'll probably be having this conversation because I feel so passionately about it. It's being clear on your purpose and your goals. I believe every single human being is inherently worthy of sharing their voice. You don't need to have a major book deal, a spot on a global stage, a PhD in English literature to have a story worth telling. So if we start from that premise, what is success? To me, it's a complete and total myth in the traditional sense, capital letter success, because the definition is, from my perspective, 100% owned by you as the individual. And so it is not my place to put a label on anything you do, whether it's writing or otherwise. We're talking about writing today, but writing or otherwise. And so so to me, the myth of success is really all about this idea of when I close the door and I'm by myself and I close my eyes, what feels real and true to my heart in terms of my path when it comes to storytelling, writing, etc. And that's what I really try to create and encourage people to create for themselves.
Oh, I love that. It's what one of my coaches would describe as, writing with soul, messaging with soul, talking with soul. And it's when it's coming from your heart, when it's coming from your soul, just by that dint alone, it's going to have value and it's going to resonate with someone and it's going to really speak very much to somebody. It's so lovely.
I love that. I'm writing that down because it made me think about one of the aspects of the writing circle, which again, my writing circle might not be for everyone, because some people would be thinking, that's a little woo-woo, Kim. What are you doing there? I'm here to write. But my writing circles start out with a little bit of breathing, a little bit of grounding, a little bit of intention setting, a little bit of checking in, and often with either a mantra or a poem or a reading that I do for people to reflect and get into the space together. Because I believe whether you're writing fiction, you're writing your life story, you're writing a business manual, no matter what you're writing, your writing is coming from your head, your heart, your experience, your memories, your life. And if you can't get in touch with that and you can't ground yourself in that first, you're not going to be able to access the richness of what can come from being in touch with yourself. So it's not always fun for everyone, because some of us are like, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts, Kim. Like, that's not where I want to be today. But I encourage, when people feel comfortable to do it, to go to that place, because that's where the true richness of our stories is going to come from.
100%. And that's what stories are all about. It's about connecting, isn't it? You're connecting your reader to your character, and it's through the emotions, not by what happens, but how your character feels about what happens. That's where it all comes together. Right, but I'm going to pull us back, because we are talking about communities, but it's so easy to get. I love all the kind of emotion stuff, the mindset stuff. I really love all that, and I think it's so important that we keep addressing it and keep reminding people that it's okay to feel, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, because as you say, none of us do, so that's wonderful. But if we come back to thinking about communities, and you mentioned there that, go and search in Google and you'll find a community. Communities will pop up and you can go and try them out. So a lot of those ones, I imagine, will be online communities. So many of us do so much online these days. What do you think are some of the pros and cons about doing an online community and then reaching out and finding a face-to-face, perhaps a more local community?
Yeah. So it's interesting you bring that up. So I've participated as a member in in-person communities, but the communities that I've hosted and created have all been online. And so I've experienced kind of both sides of them. And I love that question. I actually had some folks from one of my online communities reach out and ask me about starting up in person, because a few of them are in the general area. So I'm going to explore that. It's interesting because, to me, one of the biggest pros of the online community and space is the varied participants who are able to participate in your community. So on any given session that I'm running, we have someone from Greece, someone from Romania, someone from Costa Rica, someone from the UK, someone from Australia, depending on if I do my time zones well. So a handful of people from the US, which is where I am. And to me, nothing beats the richness of those types of conversations and support, and this idea that, oh my gosh, everything I'm experiencing, people halfway across the world are also going through this same thing. And also the diversity of perspective that helps bring as well. So I think, to me, that is one of the most valuable parts, and the thing that I love about hosting a virtual community is that we get to hear from and learn from and be in a space, a really intimate space, with people that we never would be able to be in a community with if we were staying local. So that, to me, is one of the biggest benefits. And then there's also the logistical benefit. So I'm a parent to an 8-year-old kiddo, and it is definitely way easier for me to squeeze in, an hour and a half Zoom session than to physically go somewhere. So from a logistical perspective, whether we have family or personal or other responsibilities, it's very helpful that way. So those are some of the benefits. To me, when I experienced being in an in-person environment and what I loved about it, and why that now, since I've gotten this request, I'm very seriously considering it. There really is very little that beats the energy of being in that same physical space with others, and knowing that you have, and the other people there have committed and found this space to be so important that they are willing to physically move their body and commit to being in that physical space with you for that dedicated time. There's just a different energy. There's just a different feeling. And we can try and replicate that virtually. And I do different things to attempt to do it, but there really is no beating that feeling of being in that same physical space and getting to actually interact with the energy that people are bringing. There's also no hiding. And so you sometimes are, in a good way, forced to be a little bit more raw and a little bit more vulnerable, because there is no stop video in real life.
No, it is. And I think when we are forced to get out of our comfort zone a bit, especially if it's in a safe environment, like a writing group always is, I think writers on the whole are pretty supportive people, and they want the best for others. If it can gently push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, then you get to then move a little bit more and a little bit more, and that's how you grow in your, not just in your writing, but also in your confidence as a writer as well.
I agree. That's right.
So you clearly think that it is beneficial for people to have a community. What do you think? Why is it important for them to be part of that? There's the mindset stuff that you cover as well. Has it got the capacity to help writers improve their craft as well?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, but I'm going to be totally honest with you, Emma. That's not what my community is really about. So again, this comes to finding the right community for you. The community, the people who are attracted to the community that, and I don't even like saying that I've created, because I haven't really even created it. It is co-created by the people who are participating in it. So the community that we have under the umbrella of the Open Book Company is one that is, the foundation of it is this idea of rawness, authenticity, vulnerability, open-hearted, open-minded, supportive, and working through these mindset issues and being there to support one another. I do have offerings outside of the community that are about the 3 things to know before you write your nonfiction book, and more things that are related to improving craft. I do guided writing sessions, etc. But when it comes to the actual act of coming in and doing the writing, the focus for the people who are most attracted to my community, the focus for them is really on being together and knowing that they're not alone. So It's very cliche, but it is cliche for a reason. Writing is a very solitary process. And some people like that about writing. So that's cool. Like, like some people want to just put their head down and go off on their own and write. And that's one of the reasons they're really drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
And other people are drawn to it for different reasons, or for this idea of sharing their story. And part of that comes with, okay, what are other people going to say about this? And so where are those other people? It's actually really funny. As an aside, in the core writing circles that I run, we actually don't share our writing. So a very typical aspect of writing groups is to, at the end of each writing session, to either read something that you've written or share it and get feedback. We don't do that in the writing circles. I have a separate session that is our monthly community salon, where we get together and people who want to share can share. Anyone can come and celebrate each other. That's where we're able to connect a little bit more as a community and share writing, read writing, provide feedback, let people know responses to questions they have about their writing. But in the writing circles itself, this was part of that I didn't want people to feel intimidated thing. Because one of the things that stressed me out the most about going to writing groups was, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to read and share what I've written. And I feel so much pressure during this little finite period of time to produce this masterpiece of what other people are going to think is amazing. But what if I was just kind of doodling over here and like wrote a few sentences about what I ate for breakfast, right? So I don't want people to feel in the open book community any pressure to perform or to write for other people.
Mm-hmm.
We're writing for ourselves. That's why we're coming there. And the community aspect is really about not going it alone.
Mm-hmm. That will really appeal to a number of our listeners. I'm sure I certainly have emails from people saying that they're very shy. They really feel scared about sharing their work. They feel very intimidated by it. And so knowing that there's communities like yours out there where that isn't a prerequisite, you do not have to do that. It's just about being in the space and being with others and coming to write. So do people write within, you have that hour and a half together? Do you provide prompts, or is it just come and write whatever you want to write?
So it's both. So people who come and they would like prompts, I always have a set of prompts to share, different prompts each time. So some people will come and that's all they do every time. It's okay, what are Kim's prompts? And that's where I'm going. And sometimes those turn into blog posts or journal entries or miscellaneous musings or LinkedIn articles, but sometimes they just stay as little reflections that people have. So some people come just for the prompts. And then a good number of people come with a specific project they're working on. So I've had people working on novels, people working on short stories, people working on memoirs, people working on editing content. I had someone write their wedding vows in one of the writing circles. So again, it's really just a space for you to come, to know you're not alone, and to have this community that we connect. We connect at the beginning. I shared a little bit about what that looks like. We do a brief break in the middle so people can talk through if they are getting stuck with anything, if they're having any challenges, if they want to share. And then after the last sprint, we do another little bit of a closing circle. And then I'm available the whole time through the chat or to hop in breakout rooms with people. So if people get stuck, if they want to brainstorm anything, if they just need some input, then they do have that support. So it's really a get what you need, kind of show up and take what you need that day kind of a format.
I think a lot of people will like that. They'll just want to turn up and be spontaneous and see what's speaking to them in that moment. So having that freedom will really appeal to a lot of people, I think. So thinking more broadly about communities, sort of more generally, what are the do's and the don'ts when you join a community? Because I think it must feel, I'm mostly on Facebook. That's where I'm mostly in groups on Facebook, and I always have a little look at the rules and see what's there. Is that the best place to find? Or if you're with a group who's not on Facebook, how do we find out about what the etiquette is in a group?
This is a really good question and very thoughtful question. And so a couple of things come to mind. The first is I recommend, and sort of a practice that I take when I first join a group, whatever group it is to sit back and observe a little bit. So I look at it as I'm a guest in someone's home. They have invited me in. And to your point, I'm going to look and see what any explicit rules and regulations are of this space. But I also want to get a sense of what is the feel, what is the vibe, what is the energy in this space. Not because I'm going to not show up as me in the space, but because I want to make sure that I'm respecting those who came before me and those who have been there and established the culture of this space. So I think a good rule of thumb is to actually, and by the way, other people will totally disagree and they'll say, jump right in and start a conversation. So this is according to Kim. But I think that it's a great idea to sit back and kind of observe for not a really long time, but just take a little bit in and see what the conversation's like. So that's one. Number two, reach out to the host. So I have a very intimate community. So when people are coming into the community, I already know them one-on-one. We've talked, we've connected. They've been to another course that I've done, whatever the case may be. But there are a lot of communities out there with tons of members. And so one of the things I would recommend to people is actually reach out to the host and connect with them, introduce yourself. Depending on the host, they may or may not have the ability to connect with you one-on-one, but I'm sure they would appreciate to hear from you and to know what questions are on your mind or what you're looking to get out of the group, because I think that's really beneficial as well. And then the other thing I would say is related to my earlier advice, which is don't feel obligated to stay in a group that you are not, number one, gaining value from, or that you are not, number two, giving value to. Because there are two reasons to be a part of a space: getting something and giving something. And to me, it's very important when I'm going into a new space to think about what can I add here versus what can I just take from everyone else. And especially with the informality of the internet, it's very easy to just take. What did I need? I came in, I got it, I'm gone. And I push myself, and I encourage others to think about being in this space together. We're not together in person, but if we were, how would I interact? How would I be showing up? What would I provide? And what would I want to get in return? So those are three of the things I would encourage people to keep in mind when they're considering new communities.
That's lovely suggestions. I particularly like the one of that simplicity of just reaching out to the host. What a nice, simple, personable thing to do. That's and the host will absolutely appreciate that, no doubt about it.
I love when people message me. One of the only reasons that I'm on Instagram is because of direct messages, because I love connecting with people. And I think sometimes we have this feeling of like, oh, that's, I don't know, like the teacher, going back to our school days or whatever, that there's this, no, like I want to connect with people who are considering being a part of my community. And by the way, when I say my community, I mean anyone who's attended a free workshop that I've done, a free guided writing session, anyone who's liked anything I've ever posted on social media, like you are part of my community. So I love hearing from people because number one, it shows me what's on people's minds and how I can add more value to them. But number two, it's the reminder of the humanity of it all. We are all just people doing our best. And let's connect and interact and respect each other in that way. So that's, I love
Simples.
I love that you loved that one, and I encourage people to do it more.
So your community sounds great, and I think a lot of people will be really, really keen to find out more. You mentioned there, so you've got your regular circles where people meet up, but you did just mention there that you host some free workshops and things. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. So the best place to find all this miscellaneous info is on my website at www.openbookco.com. There's a little link at the top that will get you to everything that I'm talking about today and all of the offerings, free otherwise. So that's the best place to find out about them. And the workshops that I host right now, and again, based on feedback from what people are looking for, I'm definitely open and looking at new content to be able to share. Right now, I'm focused on the top 3 things to know before you write your nonfiction book. And by the way, I tell people, if you just want to know and you can't attend the session, just email me. I'll tell you. It's not like some big secret. Like, I'm not trying to keep some hidden, golden ticket at the end of this workshop. I'll tell you, just email me. So the top 3 things to consider before writing your nonfiction book is one of the free workshops that I run. And I also run these free guided writing workshops for newbies. So that's more around writing about some of the things we've talked about. So writing about the inner critic, writing about some of your mindset stuff, writing about, do you consider yourself a writer or an author? Why or why not? And so we kind of get a little meta and do some writing about the act of writing and how we perceive ourselves. So I have those 2 free workshops that I offer every month, and then different ones are kind of swapping in here and there. And the writing circles happen. There's generally between 8 and 10 a month, just so I can accommodate different time zones. And we have different people, as I mentioned, from around the globe. So those happen 8 to 10 times a month. People can come for 1, 2. They can just come for individual sessions if they just want to get a little writing in, or they can sign up to participate for the entire month. And then anyone who's participated in one session is invited to come to the complimentary monthly salon at the end, where we can celebrate each other and support each other and hear and share feedback and lift each other up a little bit, because we certainly need more of that these days, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds lovely. So inclusive of everybody, very friendly and welcoming. I'll make sure I link to Open Book Company, the website, so that people can find out more about it. Just before we say goodbye, though, I thought I'd love to know, are you working on anything specific yourself at the moment, or is time taken up with other people?
So I do have a book idea marinating somewhere back here. So that is on marinating mode right now. My biggest focus right now is actually on writing through grief, trauma, and working towards healing through writing. And one of the things that I've recently hosted a writing circle that was focused around grief. And a lot came out of that from the participants and from myself about the value, we're talking about community. So about the value of processing things as a community, honoring each other's humanity, and supporting each other through writing and processing some hard things, whether they're shared experiences that we are experiencing just as human beings, or whether they're individual experiences. So one of the projects that I'm working on right now is figuring out and working through how to expand that type of environment and space for people in a way that meets people's needs and supports them on their journey. Because we often talk about writing as self-care, which I agree with. And sometimes we need self-care after we've written, because sometimes the act of writing actually brings up a lot that we haven't yet processed. And to me, it's really important that we honor and hold both of those things, to not say, if we write about it, then we'll be good. We're all healed now. Well, for some people, but for other people, writing is actually the first stop on the journey, because that's where the processing begins. So I'm figuring something out related to that topic. Ooh, if that isn't vague enough for you.
Well, watch the space. That's all I could say. Well,
you.
Kim, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've really enjoyed our conversation about communities today, and also learning more about your specific community and how it works. And it does sound a lovely, rich environment to be in. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I enjoyed our conversation as well.
If you're a first-time novelist who is struggling to either finish your novel or get those revisions to where you want them to be, then I've got just the thing for you. I have a small group coaching program which runs over 12 months, and over the course of that program I will help you fix those plot problems that you've been struggling with. I'll help you get under the surface of your characters so you really get to know them and what's driving them. And crucially for you, I give you that self-belief that you need to get you through the roller coaster that is writing a novel, so that you can carry on, get to the end, and get your book, your story out into the world so it can change people's lives. If that sounds good to you, if that is something that you'd be interested in doing, I know I can help you get to where you want to be. So book a call with me. Let's have a chat and see if we are a good fit for each other. If you're interested in doing that, then go to emmadesi.com/story builder. I look forward to chatting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join. Can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.